Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another chapter of Experiencer Interviews. And today we've got another amazing story coming to us from the US. We have Niara Terela Isley on board today. Niara has been a spiritual seeker from almost the cradle up. After discovering a disturbing 3-month block of missing time in 1980 from her time as an enlisted airman in the US Air Force, during which she had only the most general of memories, Niara underwent hypnosis to recover some of that missing time and to investigate other earlier memories and strange dreams from her childhood. What she discovered was staggering and life-altering, turning her life upside down for a good many years, launching her into more study and research to find out what had happened to her, why, and in what context, and to heal from the ensuing emotional fallout. As an experiencer of ET abduction / contact and strange MyLab type experiences while in the Air Force, Niara has gained deep insights into the workings of our world and the roles that different group of ETs may be playing in it. Today, she works to raise public awareness about the reality of ETs, to shed light on the machinations of the shadow government and reframe it all in a life-affirming and hope-filled vision of where we may be headed as a species from her own lifelong spiritual experience and perspective. So Niara, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
I know you've been through a lot, and I'm really glad that you chose to come on today and share your story with us. And I'd like to perhaps start from the beginning. Did anything happen to you as a child?
As a child, yeah, things definitely happened as a child. I remember, well, here's the memory that I carried, and then I got the rest of it later. Waking up from, well, I had this nightmare as a child, and my older sister, who was 12 at the time, and I was like 4, in the dream, she had taken me out in the middle of the night, and she was going to go meet some friends, and she left me under a street lamp, and so there was a street lamp on the street, and she said, just stay here in this light of the street lamp and you'll be fine, and I'll come back and get you in a little while. So I stood under the light, and everything outside the light was very, very surreal. Everything where the light wasn't touching was pitch black. So I couldn't see anything outside the circle of that light shining over me. And I waited and I waited and I waited and I waited, and she didn't come back, and she didn't come back. Finally, I got so scared being alone there under that light that I just started screaming. And I woke up in my bed screaming. And my mom came in and said, shh, 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 you're going to wake up your dad. You're going to wake up your dad, which was not a good thing to wake up dad, you know. So I was quiet at that point, but I never forgot that dream. And then years later, when I met Bud Hopkins at a Whole Life Expo in Las Vegas, I saw his talk, and afterwards, when he was done taking questions, I raised my hand and I said, okay, I've got this strange dream from childhood. I have 3 months of missing time from the time I was in the military. I don't have any idea what happened. I just found out about that missing time. And he said, talk to me afterwards, after we're done with the presentation. So that's what I did. And he did hypnosis on me that night, and probably a couple other people too. And that's when I got the other piece of what happened that night during the nightmare as a child. Basically, a craft had come over, and it came so close to the house that the light from the craft was shining through the bedroom window. And I remember saying, kind of in awe, in this childlike voice of, wow, it's nighttime, but it's like daylight outside. It's like daylight outside, but it's the middle of the night. And then suddenly I was lifted up through, you know, levitated up out of the bed, up through the ceiling, you know, so they altered the molecular structure of the ceiling to allow me to pass through it. And I went up, and it was kind of like the traditional exam that you hear about so often in ET or gray abductions, because they were grays. And so I was on a table. and they were examining with something that in my childlike state of mind, I called it a stomach presser because I didn't know what else to call it. But when I came out of hypnosis, I looked at Bud and I said, that was like an ultrasound that they were doing. It's like they were doing an ultrasound of the abdominal area. And they were probably checking out my reproductive area, the uterus and egg, the ovaries and things like that. And I was really scared of them. And I was also really angry with them. And they were reading my thoughts. I picked up very quickly that the thoughts could go both ways. And I remember thinking, you guys are pretty skinny. And if I ever get off this table, I'm going to pick you up and break you in half and watch your fluids flow out. I was like, because I didn't want to be there. I didn't want to be there. I didn't like this. And I kept, and then my sister shows up in this thing, and she's standing off to one side. And she looks extremely calm and just completely like, hey, no big deal. Nothing's going on here. I'm just standing here watching you. And because of my own sensitivity, I realized that it was a gray standing there projecting an image of my sister. Because I thought, no way in hell is my sister going to be standing there in this situation without screaming her head off, So it was crazy.
Wow.
And these kinds of experiences went on through childhood from time to time and into adolescence and into young adulthood. And sorry, I got this tickle in my nose. But and then, as soon as I reached puberty, that's when the hybrid situation happened with, getting impregnated and getting fetuses harvested from me in the first trimester of pregnancy. I'm estimating that about 17 hybrid offspring were taken from me.
Because you had a phantom pregnancy, you went to the doctor, something happened?
Yeah, strange things would happen. I don't want to put this. It's like lots of times I would go to the doctor. It seemed like every time I went in for an OBGYN experience, exam, they do a pelvic exam and they'd say, "Are you pregnant?" And I said, "No, I'm not pregnant." Well, this happened so many times. Finally, I went into it for the exam and I got the same question, "Are you pregnant?" I said, "No, there's no way I can be pregnant. I haven't been with anybody in order to be pregnant," and everything else like that. And I said, just because I'm getting curious about this, because I always get asked this question, they said, "Well, it is kind of a standard question, but the reason I'm asking you is because your uterus is enlarged." And so I don't know why my uterus would be enlarged, without some pregnancy taking place in it. Mm. So this happened a lot throughout my young adult years. And then finally, when I went in to get a tubal ligation because I didn't want to continue on any drugs. I just wanted to be sterilized, so to speak, and not worry about any further pregnancies. And when the doctor went in, he did a local anesthetic, so I was awake for the procedure in his office. And he made the incision, and he went in and removed the. He left the ovaries. He just removed tied them off, or removed a section of the ovary so it didn't connect with the uterus. And he was really surprised. He said in this kind of tone of voice, he says, "Have you had any other procedures here?" And I said, "No. I stay away from you doctors as much as I possibly can. I don't like procedures." I said, "Why?" He says, "Your whole abdominal cavity is filled with adhesions. And an adhesion is like a bit of scar tissue where one piece of your inner body tissues is stuck to another piece." And so I said, "I have no idea. I have no idea why that's in there." So later on, I had another hypnosis session with Gloria Hawker, and we looked at the alien abduction scenarios in my life. And basically what they were doing was the Greys would make sure that I was impregnated, and then they would take the fetus in the first trimester, and they would go in with a needle, a long needle, through the belly button and probe around inside the uterus until they got the fetus, and then they would remove it all through the belly button. And a needle going in and out of my abdominal cavity, probing around like that, perfectly explains those adhesions. So there you have it, you know. So started in young childhood, where they were kind of making sure that I was suitable for the purpose that they wanted. And then these things happened throughout my adolescence and young adult years, up until 35, when I had the tubal ligation.
Were you ever shown if you had offspring?
No, well, let's see. I was never shown offspring like most people have. I did somehow, through another woman who was really sensitive. She said, "You have a grown daughter on the ships." And she's one of the few that survived, you know, because most of the babies you had there didn't survive. But she survived, and she has she's fit herself into the culture on the ships, but she has emotions from you that cause her some difficulty within that culture. It's a very non-emotional culture. And so that's about the only experience I had, was just through this woman who was a sensitive, telling me about the daughter that I had out there. It would have been tough on me if I had seen my own children on the ship, you know. I have a warrior spirit inside of me.
Yeah.
And there's just some things, you know, after what happened to me in the military, especially, it's like, don't come at me, man. Don't do it. Don't do it.
Okay, so you had these events up until like early adulthood. So, but what got you to enlist?
What got me to enlist? Well, I was raised by my father to be very patriotic. Yep. And the idea of military life really appealed to me. I got a little taste of it as a military wife. I was married to a guy in the Army, and we spent a couple years in Germany. And I really liked the order of military life. It's a very orderly existence, at least on the surface. Mm-hmm. And I like that. And I wanted to get some different kinds of vocational training, in which case I got radar training. I wasn't able to use it, though, after I got out of the military, but at least I got the training and had opportunities for other things that I would have taken advantage of, except my husband, at the time I was in the Air Force, wanted to get out of the Air Force. And so we separated from the Air Force and went on with our lives. But where was I going with that? Just, you know, my dad raised me to be very patriotic. And so when I signed on the line, it said I was enlisting and everything else like that, I knew exactly what that meant. It meant that someday I might be asked to put my life on the line for my country. I took the oath of service to defend the United States and its Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And I still hold that oath very dear to me now. And I feel like the book that I wrote, Facing the Shadow, Embracing the Light, is some of the best service I ever did to my country. The very best. The experiences that I had in the Air Force started in January of 1980. And I don't know what was done to me, but after I got out of the service, I just never thought about that time period at all. And Bud remarked on that being very strange, because I met my husband at the time. We met during that time period. Excuse me. And he says, usually when two people become involved, that's a time you really remember. Well, I didn't remember anything. So 3 months went, just, I remembered nothing. I knew that I worked at Tonopah Electronic Warfare Range and stayed at the town of Tonopah, north of Nevada, or north of Las Vegas. I knew that I did that, but that's pretty general memory. No details, no nothing, no filling in of any kind. And then I didn't remember the people I worked with on a daily basis. I didn't remember anything. I worked really hard to get back some of those memories. I thought about people I knew before I went to that Nellis Air Force Base, and I thought about people I knew after I left Nellis Air Force Base that I knew for a fact also worked at the Tonopah Electronic Warfare Range. And I tried to use my relationships with those people and my memories of those people to try to make an inroad from either side of the timeline into those memories, and I was not successful. I did finally remember social events during that time period with some of my friends from that section of the military, other radar operators, etc. But that was it. I couldn't remember anything more. And then the same hypnosis session I had with Bud Hopkins that revealed the childhood thing revealed at least a good chunk of what happened during that 3 months of missing time. And okay, before I go down that road, I'm just going to say one thing that has come to light over the last probably 7 or 8 years is that I may have had a 20 and back to Mars. And part of that 3 months of missing time may have been reintegration time back into this lifetime here. And there's a lot, I don't know too much about it. I've had memories, or I've had dreams about Mars and some other dreams that were really vivid regarding Mars. And we can get into that later, but I'll kind of continue on the other track. So anyway, Bud is doing the hypnosis session on me, and he says, okay, we're going to take a look at January of 1980. He says, so it's January of 1980, and, unusual things were happening to you, and where do you find yourself here in January of 1980? And I said, well, I'm standing out on the deck of the radar van, and I'm looking up in the sky because there's saucers up there. There are saucers, flying saucers up there. And one is pretty close to the RT, which is the radar antenna. And I was looking at that one because that was the one I could see the most detail on. It was saucer shaped. It was really, really large. And it was glowing orange on the bottom. And it was like whatever the metal was there was like maybe a metal skin. It was really thin. And it looked like the orange lights were lighting up in sequence around the bottom of the craft, giving the appearance of a spin. And the feeling in the air was kind of like if you're at a rock concert and the speakers are turned on and they're kind of humming in the background, and they're got this static, and it kind of makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. There was that kind of feeling in the air. It was like the hair was standing up on the back of my neck, and I could just feel this kind of creepy feeling from the hum of that craft. Like all the hairs standing up, not just on the back of my neck, my arms and everything else like that. And I looked at it and I thought, shit, this is scary as hell because I don't have the security clearance to be seeing this. Oh. And, security clearances are pretty serious things. There's confidential, there's secret, which is what I had. Then there's top secret. And then there are levels of top secret, of which the highest one that I know of is Q clearance. And so I just had a secret clearance. I thought, I can't be seeing this. And the fact that I am seeing it is scaring the hell out of me. Well, that's right to be scared. Because what happened was I was put on a bus and taken to what I think was Area 51. There's two possibilities. It was either Area 51 or it was an underground facility discussed by William Pollack, part of Greer's Disclosure Project, there was an underground facility that he talked about at the Tonopah area. And so it was one of those two places. But right now, I'm just going to say it was probably Area 51, because that's what I'm guessing because of the length of the bus ride, let's say. Bus with painted over windows, Air Force blue, a few other people on the bus besides me. We were taken out of the bus. We were ushered into a military facility by people with sidearms, wearing sidearms. We were sat down in a waiting room, and there's actually a picture I think I sent you of that waiting room, or at least one of the chairs of the waiting room.
Yeah, the chair.
Yeah. So when I see it in my mind's eye, it's like a square, kind of a square room. And at one back part of the room, there's like double doors with windows in them. And there was lights on in that hallway shining through the windows of those double doors. And in the room itself, being the square, there was a row of chairs diagonal across there, and our backs were to the window with the lights shining in. And one by one, they called us into this little side room that would have been on that side. And when it was my turn to go in there, I'm guessing maybe 12, 15 people were sitting in there. The lights were off in the room, and they were off on purpose because anything they could do to help us not remember details about our experiences were being done, like being threatened at gunpoint not to talk to each other. You're not to talk to each other about anything. You just keep quiet. You don't even look at people. You just keep your eyes straight ahead. You don't talk to anybody. And they had guns that, they made their point. So finally, it was my turn to go off in a little side room. I was told to lay down on a stainless steel examining table. There was a guy with a sidearm watching me to make sure I didn't bolt and run out of the room. I waited there for, I don't really know how long. It seemed like a long time because I was really scared. Then some guy in a white lab coat came through the same door I had entered that room. And he said, "Stay calm," 3 times in a really deadpan monotone voice. And he walked beside the security guard at the foot of the table, walked up along the side of the table. When he got to the side of my neck here, he raised his hand with one smooth motion and put a hypodermic needle in the side of my neck. And whatever the chemical was went straight to the brain, and it put me immediately into shock and trauma. And then suddenly I'm going to carry this on from a later hypnosis session, because at that point during the Bud hypnosis session, Bud Hopkins, I woke up. I couldn't take anymore. As soon as that injection happened, I was out of the hypnosis. I was sitting up and I said, "What the hell was that?" And he says, I don't write about this because I don't want the government to get into my business, but I've heard this story, similar stories to this before yours. So it does happen. And so when I had hypnosis later on, a few years later, I was able to continue what happened after the injection, which what did happen was 2 security guards just kind of appeared on either side of me, probably because I was out of it from the injection. And they lifted me by both arms off that table. They took me down a very long flight of stairs. And at the bottom of the stairs, there was like this little booth. And they shoved me in that little room or whatever it was and locked the door. I had just about enough cognition left to notice that there was like a window in part of this room. And it looked like a one-way window where people could be watching me, but I couldn't see them. And this is a scene actually straight out of Taken, the mini-series Taken. So I went through the effects of the injection in there, and I remember screaming because I couldn't, the feeling that I was feeling was just horrible. It was frightening, terrifying. Felt like my body was going to dissolve and run through and just be gone, like it was going to dissolve and I'd just be liquid and run down a drain in the floor. That didn't happen, and it's taken me a lot of years to try to put one thing with another. And what I actually felt in my whole body is when you go to the dentist, you have Novocaine, and then your Novocaine is starting to wear off. Well, magnify that times about 1,000 or 100 at least. And that's what my whole body was feeling like. And it was just extremely intense. It was really scary. And I just kept screaming until I was too exhausted to scream anymore. And then I was hauled out of there by the same 2 security guards, who then sexually assaulted me in front of 8 people. And one of the people that was there was a gray alien. And I thought a lot about that too. I thought, why would they do something like that? Finally, this is the explanation that I finally came up with over the years, that the people that were watching that happen worked and lived, worked out at that area, and they were probably being threatened by what they were seeing, because most of them looked like they didn't want to watch it, And I have a feeling that they were using what was happening to me as a threat to those guys, saying, if you ever talk about what you're working on here, this is going to happen to your wives and your daughters. I think that's probably what it was. Okay. And the gray, I picked up some of his thoughts or its thoughts, and he was kind of appalled isn't the right word, but he was really surprised that the human beings would do something like this to another one of their own kind. And so that went on. I think this scenario probably happened for me at least a few times over the 3-month time period. And the trauma, this is one thing that people need to understand about trauma. And this started in Nazi Germany in the concentration camps. They would traumatize people to a certain degree to find out how much trauma it would take to break the mind and cause the person to take the traumatic event and bury it in their subconscious where they wouldn't even remember it. So that's part of the MK Ultra mind control stuff that's been going on. So I was specifically traumatized very badly to make sure that I didn't remember anything that I saw that night or over that 3-month period of time. And it worked really well until somebody sat me down and talked to me about my military time and went and took me into that time frame.
They didn't try to create altars?
No, not that I know of. Okay. But my friend, he noticed in conversation, he says, well, she's been in the Air Force, but she never talks about it. Every time I ask her about military time, she just kind of skates away from the subject. So he sat me down one afternoon and he said, can we talk about your military time? And I said, sure, no problem. He says, can you tell me about it chronologically? And I said, sure. And I said, Nellis Air Force Base, or no, I'm sorry, Lackland Air Force Base for boot camp. And I went in Cleveland, I entered in Cleveland, went to Lackland, 6 weeks of boot camp there. And then I was stationed at Keesler Air Force Base, blah, 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 long story short. And then I was stationed at Nellis Air Force Base and worked at Tonopah Electronic Warfare Range. And then I stopped talking and I stared at my friend. I said, I don't remember anything about working at Tonopah. And I felt nauseous. I mean, it was like nausea just swept through my body that I couldn't remember 3 months of my life. And fortunately, my friend knew stuff about this. That's why he was concerned that I never wanted to talk about the military time, that I would always change the subject. Well, that was planted. I think there was also another plant in me to commit suicide. I came very near to committing suicide at around age 33. And I was having PTSD from what happened to me without the memories, because the body remembers what's happened to it, even if the mind doesn't. So I was having really bad PTSD. I was having anxiety. I was having rages, all kinds of stuff. And I thought, man, this is a miserable life, and I'm making my family miserable. I'm making myself miserable. I'm out of here. So I made a little plan, and what would happen to the kids and what would happen to the pets and everything else like that. And the day came when I was going to do it. And I remembered back from before I went in the military. This saved my life. before I went into the military, I'd had a spiritual experience of being out of my body that was so incredibly real. And the thing that validated it for me was it was nothing like what I would have imagined it to be. If I would imagine going out of the body, I would have imagined a ghost me stepping out of this body and just kind of walking around or floating around. It wasn't like that at all. It was like suddenly out the top of the head. And if I had a body at all when I was out there, it was spherical. And it could see 360 degrees. And if I wanted to look at a particular thing in a particular direction, it's like all these little points of light would gather together on the surface of the sphere that I was and point a beam of vision in a particular direction. Because I wanted to look back at my body sitting on the sofa. And that's what I saw. Anyway, so that experience saved me from suicide because I realized that I wasn't my body. And I had a very strong feeling that if I committed suicide, that I would find myself in a really bad and really dark place, and there would be no body to return to here on Earth. And I could be there for a very long time. And so I'm still here. And after that near brush with suicide, I thought, whatever it takes, wherever I have to look to heal whatever's going on with me, I'm going there. And one incident, one person at a time, it led me to getting my memories back and learning to deal with them, which was very difficult. Didn't really want to live with them either, but I knew that suicide was not a way out. So here I am. And anyway, it's been rough. And I know what it is to be human trafficked. And, this is going to sound really out there, but I've talked about it in other interviews. Being put on a craft and taken to the moon and used for hard labor during the day and for entertaining the troops at night. And that means, non-consensual assault, sexual assault.
Well, could you get into the story of you going to the moon?
Get into that?
Yeah.
Here's what I remember about it, which seems to be enough memories. There was a particular security guard who was my handler. He has blonde hair, very cold, icy blue eyes, real bastard. I kind of think maybe they dug him out of prison someplace because he was like a psychopath. Said, we'd like you to work for the military or for these special projects. And you have a unique attitude and skill set that we can use, because these people have no conscience. So he was the handler, my handler. And remember, he took me to a hangar. And the hangar was very similar to, it's kind of like I recognized the way the hangars were laid out from, God, what is that guy's name? Schratt. His last name is Schratt. He did a presentation at the International UFO Congress years ago where he showed drawings of how the underground hangars are laid out. Well, and you could see them from like a catwalk. Well, I was down on the floor of one of these hangars. There was a saucer in there, and that blonde security guard took me there. And he may not have been regular military. He may have been some kind of government contractor. And we went up near the craft, and he handed me these silverish looking garments. And he said, put these on. And I had to do it right there in front of everybody, take everything off, and then put these silver garments on. And these silver garments were very interesting, and that as soon as you got them on, they form-fitted themselves to your body. And so when I see Dr. Sala's book where he's got the alien lady and the military guy shaking hands, and she's wearing that form-fitting silver suit, I'm thinking, I know what that is, And so I put these clothes on. I had boots and gloves. So I had boots on, I had the gloves, but I didn't put them on. I just had them tucked in my waist or something. And then I was told to get on the craft. And then that security guard handler said, "See you when you get back, sweetheart." And I knew what that meant. It meant more trauma. So then I was told to lay down on the floor of the craft, more like cargo than a passenger. And there were two other people that were put on that craft with me. One of them I actually recognized, but I never say that person's name because I have no idea if they have any memory, and they don't need to be forced into it by my disclosures. So anyway, the craft took off, and as it did, there was intense feeling of gravity for a few seconds, pushing me into the floor, which the floor had a little bit of a spongy quality. It was hard, but it had that spongy quality. There was no window I could look out of, so I couldn't really look and see where we were going or what was happening on. And the trip itself didn't seem to last very long, maybe 20 minutes. And there was something about the travel that was kind of mentally disorienting. And I don't know how to describe it more than that. Like maybe the speed of it. I don't know. There's something just kind of disorienting about the movement of the craft. Then we got off on what was, pretty sure was the moon. And we were told to get off the ship and walk straight ahead to this building over in this direction. And I got off the craft, and they said, "Keep your eyes straight ahead. Do not look right. Do not look left." So I kept my eyes straight ahead, but I was kind of stretching my eyeballs to look up to see if there was a dome up there, because I thought, I'm breathing oxygen here. Is there a dome up there, or is there oxygen on the moon? I wasn't really sure. So anyway, we went into the building, and then I spent a week there. Like I said, during the day, working different things during the day, and then being passed around at night. And horrible experience from beginning to end.
What type of work did you do on the moon?
Mostly manual labor, like stacking boxes or moving things around. There was one time when I had to operate some equipment. It was fairly simple to operate. It operated on electromagnetics. And basically, these two large, long metal plates, they were together like this, magnetized together. And then they would use the magnetism to somehow vibrate these two plates down into the ground of the earth. And then the two plates would generate like a south pole and a south pole, as you know, that would repel. Okay. And so they would have a balanced, similar field that would cause them to repel, and they would go like this. And because they were embedded in the ground, they would then excavate a fairly flat area where they could then put a landing field or a building on. And that's one of the things that I did, but I only did that one time that I remember, and the rest of the time it was doing manual labor of moving boxes here and there and stacking things up. And I don't remember too much about it, to be honest.
Now, so you looked at the dome, the possible dome. Do you remember looking at the ground?
As soon as he said ground, I felt like there was some kind of artificial surface under my feet.
So it wasn't gravel?
It wasn't gravel, no.
Okay.
There was some kind of artificial surface down there. And I do feel like there's a thin atmosphere of air on the moon. And this is from another session I had. I've had a few hypnosis sessions, some with someone who did quantum healing hypnosis via Dolores Cannon.
Yeah.
And I had her ask me that question. I said, was there air on the moon? And I didn't get a verbal answer. What I got was a visual. And in the visual, all the cracks and crevices on the surface of the moon where the sun didn't hit directly. In those cracks and crevices, there was a type of algae growing that made oxygen. So there may have been a thin atmosphere there.
Wow. Do you recall the type of craft that took you?
Saucer. It was saucer shaped.
Okay.
It was saucer shaped.
Like the image you sent me?
Yes, and the pilot, I think, was reptilian. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do. I recall, the time that you went on Misha's show, and I had actually asked you a question regarding that. You said something to the extent that the bad ETs couldn't do anything to you because other ETs knew who you are and you were protected.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Could you get into that?
Well, not too protected, obviously, because bad things happen to me. But here's what I think you're referring to, and this is what got me out of the program and sent back to Earth, and my mind wiped, and basically I got booted out of that Black Ops project. There was an ET that was on the moon, and he met up with one of the military officers or whatever that was in charge of my time on the moon, and he had telepathic exchange with him, saying this. And he could view me and see who I was from my aura, because I feel that I'm a Lyran starseed very, very powerfully all my life. Okay. So this guy, this ET, which was very tall, willowy sort of ET, not gray. And he was having this exchange with the officer, and he says, "You have no idea who you have there. Do you realize that everything you're doing to her gets reported back to her people," meaning the Lyrans? And at that point, that was the end of it. They sent me back to Earth. Memory was wiped, and I was out of it. And because I think that there's some kind of treaty or agreement between the Lyran extraterrestrials and the US government not to abuse their people. And that extends to people that have incarnated as human, but are still of Lyran soul lineage. I know it probably sounds really bizarre to a lot of people that aren't into all this stuff, but for better or worse, that's my story. And it makes sense to me in my life and the way my life has unfolded.
Do you know why that other men would force themselves onto you? Was it to like break you, to help with the fact that your mind got wiped?
Yeah, well, trauma-based mind control is part of it. And part of the things that were really traumatic about the sexual assault was, because, I'm no cupcake, I'm not that fragile of a person, and I've gotten more tough through the years. So in order to traumatize me enough to get me to forget everything, this guy, this blonde security guard, would sexually assault me. And while he was sexually assaulting me, he would slowly strangle me at the same time until I lost consciousness. And it was either alternately with the strangling, just very slow pressure at the throat, or he would cover the mouth and nose and smother me that way. And this would happen multiple times in a single session. And I would be losing consciousness, wondering if I was ever going to see my daughter again. And that's a lot of trauma. And that's something that would make someone break that off, break everything associated with that off, and stick it in the subconscious and never want to look at it again. And that's why I'm very careful about telling people, if you feel like you have strange memories, or if you have missing time, really track your feelings about it in your gut, because once you start digging those memories out, you got to make sure that you can handle them when they come up. What I did, it's not for everybody. you know, following this thread and going where I went with it and writing the book. It's not for everybody, you know, and you have to be very, very careful. If anybody listening to this feels like they have had experiences like this, explore them carefully, explore them with someone very caring like Misha Johnston and her groups, because it's not pretty, and it's going to really impact your life. You know, I mean, when I got the bulk of my memories back in a hypnosis session with Gloria Hawker, you know, some years after the one with Bud Hopkins, I'd spend days sitting on my sofa with my knees up in my chest and my arms around them, just rocking back and forth, thinking, how am I going to go on living with this? How am I going to go on living with these memories? Because right now I just don't feel like I want to share the planet with people that are this horrible. You know, I mean, those are the kinds of things that you have to be willing to face, and you have to have enough inner fortitude to do that. But you have to also here's something I want to say that's really good that I feel about the majority of the human race, is we have a spark of God consciousness in each and every single one of us. And if we can ever put aside our divisions and the way that we're manipulated and propagandized and controlled by the media here, if we can ever put that aside and come together on a common cause, consciousness within humanity could go supernova and could go to the most beautiful place you could possibly imagine, or maybe the most beautiful place you can't even imagine. I think that's the potential inside each and every one of us. And if we ever put it all together, we would be unstoppable. We would realize that potential that the ETs placed within us when they made us from 22 different ET species. And we have that DNA and we have that potential inside of us. And it's incredible and it's very special. And it's why humans are kidnapped and taken off planet for their genetics. Because as Alex Collier said, we are genetic royalty. Okay, so we have an incredible potential. And I really hope that someday we see humanity realize that potential.
I was about to say that.
Yeah.
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 You sent me an image regarding a hybrid lover.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So when did that happen?
Oh, that happened during adolescence and young adulthood. And with all the memories I have, I kind of look back on it with just a little fondness because he was so much more gentle with me than the stuff in the military experiences, which were just unbelievably brutal. It's like he could sense my discomfort at being with him in a sexual sense. And he would do his best to try to comfort me, you know. You know, he would put his hand out and put it on my tummy in a comforting way, or put his hand on my hip in a comforting way. And it was really strange, but I could feel that he was trying to make it better for me in some way, even though it was like, if I had a choice, it was like, get me the hell out of here, you know. And sometimes they'll give you a dream memory or a screen memory in a dream to kind of cover what's actually really happening. And so that's a big help. But, you know, apparently I'm sensitive enough to see through the screenings. So it's like, it kind of shifts back and forth. You know, you think you're having this dream of being with a really handsome guy, and then suddenly that slips, and then you see who you're really with. And it's kind of strange, you know.
So this happened in your bedroom?
Yeah, I think so. It may have happened on the ship at times too, but yeah. Anyway, some people take this information and they laugh and they joke and they make a bunch of dirty whatever. And I had one guy, I have no idea who his name was, but he made a video of a woman having sex with an alien and then pasted my head on the woman's body and had this horrible video out there, and I had to take it down. But I mean, this is the kind of stuff that people do, and it's really shitty. You know, it's like, you don't have to do that kind of stuff, because it's just kind of making it. So people do strange things, and they do things that really are not nice with this information. I'm talking about this information as candidly as I can to help those of you in the audience who have had similar experiences come to grips with them, and to validate you and let you know you're not crazy and everything else like that. And the other people who do bad things with this information can go to hell.
Yeah.
That's kind of it.
Well, any type of info that could resonate with someone really is helpful. When I started talking about my shadow people and how I described it, I shared with everyone a drawing of them, and people started contacting me. Hey, they look like one Gina's from Australia, and I've seen those too, and it gets this conversation started. So
yeah, Well, the hybrid I was with, he had the big, really big eyes, but they were blue. And he had very wispy little strands of whitish hair. And again, the way he treated me was TLC compared to what tender loving care compared to what I got in the military from other human beings.
Was he the normal type of gray hybrid?
Pretty normal type of gray hybrid. Okay. So I think you got the picture, so maybe you can put a picture up.
Sure. How about the nightmare shadow image? You've got this sort of black shadow with 3 white shadows.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Was that regarding the Jinn incident or something different?
Well, it was kind of a Jinn incident. I didn't call it that at the time. I just had this nightmare of something chasing me through my whole dream. I mean, trying to get away from it. And it was like an unseen evil presence chasing me through my dream. And I remember in the dream, I went to, I found myself getting to a Bible study class that was just breaking up, and the people were leaving. And this this guy that had been leading the Bible study class, I talked to him. I said, "Can you help me?" I said, "Something's chasing me. I don't know what it is, but it's real. It's palpable, and I can't see it." And he looked at me, and he looked at me with these really strange eyes, like, "Yes, I can help you." And he was just like, his eyes were fixated on my eyes. And he came very slowly, came close to me in the dream. And he was standing over me, and I was looking up at him, and he leaned down, and he was going to put his mouth over my mouth, but not to kiss me. And I just thought, he's like one of them, and I just bolted and ran. And I ran and I ran, and then I ran to a friend's house, and I ran up the stairs to his apartment. And by the time I was doing that, I felt like this thing was getting control of me, and it was like fighting a hurricane to try to get up the stairs to my friend's apartment. And I banged on his door, and he opened the door, and I saw him. And then I woke up in my bedroom for real, in real life. And I saw, and the energy in the room was just terrible, just terrible. It was like, nightmare music, just terrible, discordant stuff that just jangles in your body. And I saw this thing over by the window that looked like a head and shoulders that faded out below the waist. It was black, but it was translucent because I could see the window through it. And I had to face my fears and send it away. I just had to send it away. And I did that. Part of the reason was because my little 3-year-old daughter or 2-year-old daughter was asleep in the bed in the same room. So it was partly protective. And so I sent it away, and finally it just went poof. It was just completely disappeared. And then on the other side of the room, there were these 3 figures that were kind of white and luminescent. They weren't really shadows. And that was my first meeting with what I call my Lyran star family. And later on, I realized that was my mother, my father, and my uncle from Lyra. And they have been watching over me my whole life. And they did that. They were watching the whole thing, mostly there to protect me if I couldn't handle it, but they wanted to see if I could handle it. And I did. And they were really happy that I handled it so well and did what they thought that I should do.
How do you feel about that? Knowing that someone's watching over you.
It's a wonderful feeling. It's really a wonderful feeling knowing that. And I've also had, I haven't been as closely in touch with these spirit guides. I would call them family spirit guides as much. But I also had a mantis being who was a spirit guardian. Can't really say guide, but guardian. And he was really there for my protection. And I call him MB, which means, let's see. Yeah, mantis being. Okay, so M, the letter M, and then the letter B, mantis being. So I just called him MB for fun, for short. And he was always there protecting me. One time I was staying at somebody's house that the house had been built on Native American burial ground. So there were some spirits around there that were not happy. And so I had a nightmare there, and I woke up, and that was another instance where the nightmare was still in the room when I woke up. But MB was also there, and he was really big, and I never saw him look like this before, but always when I would see him, he would look very placid, and his coloring would be very placid and peaceful looking. But in this instance, he was standing with his arms outstretched, kind of standing over me with the arms outstretched, and he had wings, like from the hand section all the way down to his side, which I'd never seen that part of him before. He had hands out like this, and his eyes were glowing like red orange. And he was saying, "This woman is under my protection. Leave now." And that was it. That thing was gone. So it's nice to have the protection. And sometimes, even when you're going through bad things, I guess in my case, I was meant to write the book. I was meant to go public and blow the whistle on what I did. And I was meant to write the book because of how much it would help other people. Mm-hmm. And some other people out there have written their own books or in the process of writing their own books. And me sharing my experiences changed the course of their life for the better. So tough as life has been for me, I wouldn't change a thing. I wouldn't change a thing. Because I've met my real tribe of people, which is people like you, Yan.
Yeah.
People like some other friends that I have. And I wouldn't change a thing today. I came through it. I'm doing good. I'm not surviving. I'm thriving. And I still deal with some stuff. I probably have some serious baggage around intimacy that might carry to the grave. I can't really see myself ever getting involved with anybody ever again. If it did happen, it would have to sneak up on me in the guise of a best friend, a male best friend, who maybe after 3 years of being really good friends, we suddenly discovered, oh, there's these other feelings, and it would be okay because we built some trust. Yeah. But that's probably how it would have to happen, And I'm pretty happy with my canine family.
Yeah, puppies. Mm-hmm. If someone wants to buy your book, how do they proceed?
Well, it's on Amazon. Facing the Shadow, Embracing the Light: A Journey of Spirit Retrieval and Awakening. And if you get a minute, I got one I can hold up here so sure. People can see it. Yep. So there's the way it looks.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
It's thick too, so.
It is. Well,
it's worth it. Yeah.
You can't make claims like I make in the book without doing a lot of background supporting research, like going to the moon. People say, she's loony. She thinks she went to the moon, but there's so much other lore out there, especially from Stephen Greer's Disclosure Project. And I'm not a fan of Stephen Greer at all. But he did a good thing with the Disclosure Project, and there were people there that talked about the moon. Sergeant Wolf that talked about seeing photos that were of structures on the moon. Who was the other lady? I can't think of her. She talked about them airbrushing pictures of the moon to remove There's Gary McKinnon, who hacked into the naval database and found a list of non-terrestrial officer names and evidence of a space-based naval fleet. So it wasn't enough to just write about my experiences and put it out there. You have to give the background, you have to give the whole political and social context in which such things happen. And it's really a journey down the rabbit hole, and the rabbit hole goes very deep, and parts of it are very, very ugly. So I did all that supporting research so that people could see that these kinds of experiences happen to me and others like me within a whole political and social context that has been shielded from regular people's view for many, many years. And we're living in times right now that are really troubling, really ugly, really messy, but also really extraordinary, because all the stuff is coming out. And all the stuff that's coming out is validating just about everything I've written in my book. And that's really exciting, to see that. I mean, I'd rather not have validation for some of the horrible things I had to share in my book, but it all has to come out so that we can move on in this world in a better way and from a better place inside of ourselves. We have to know the truth. And I just put a post up this morning about the importance of truth on my Facebook page, on my Facebook wall.
Yeah.
Because spiritual truths are really important. They're usually very simple, and they're usually very profound, and they touch someplace deep inside of you that they're real. But other truth is really important too. We have to know the truth of what the world has been without our knowledge, if we're going to move on in any kind of meaningful way as a human species on this planet. We can't keep going the way we have been. All the stuff has to come out, and all the stuff is coming out, and it's not pretty, but we will get through this. And when we get to the other side, we're going to put together a much better world.
You sent me an image about 0 point focal point. Oh, what's that about?
Oh, that was kind of my way of showing, and I had a human figure standing or dancing in the middle of it, and you remember in high school or junior high school, they'd give you a number line to teach you about positive numbers and negative numbers. Okay, well, I used that diagram when I was talking about exploration of outer space. So like the positive numbers go out into regular space. Like if we imagined the positive numbers going out into the physical universe through spaceships and exploring and everything else like that. But on the negative side, it's about the spiritual journey. It's about going on the inner planes. It's about going and exploring your inner being and your psyche and the universes and multiverses that exist within you. So that's what that number line was about. It's about what kind of astronaut are you going to be? Are you going to go out and explore outer space, or are you going to go and explore inner space? And I've been an explorer of inner space.
Pretty cool. Really cool. Wow. And the auric interaction, that's interesting. What's that?
Well, our auric field extends out from the center of us, and it really extends out quite far. We only see a certain portion of it, but when we have auric field interaction, basically, well, David Icke put it this way. He said, you could be standing next to somebody buying a can of beans in the grocery store, but your auric fields are interacting, and this person will walk away and they'll suddenly key into something that's been part of your experience, and they'll realize, wow, there's really something here. I need to look at this harder. I need to look at this more thoroughly. It's like they have a little awakening because they had auric interaction with your aura in the grocery store, even though you never said a word to each other.
Okay.
It's like all of our life experience is in our aura. So with all of my life experience, when I go out and I mix with my community, and my aura blends, edge to edge with different people, they may suddenly find themselves interested in a few more topics than they thought they were interested in the past. So that's what I mean by that. That was what I was trying to illustrate.
We had a family party a few years ago, and my aunt, she's the worst down-to-earth person. You never talk about ETs or anything spiritual. And I was hanging around her a lot during that time. And then all of a sudden she starts jerking around like she's afraid something's like cuckoo's happening. And she says, I just had a premonition or of sorts, like a déjà vu. And she was freaked out. And I thought to myself, oh, okay, well, it's perhaps because of me. So I thought that was funny. Good for her. And yeah, I've got one last question.
Sure.
Why you? Because I'm not like those in the Air Force, they're not all candidates for what you've been through. So have you ever found out why you?
Why me? Before I was born, I consciously accepted this lifetime and all that would come with it. That's what I've come to feel and what I've come to believe implicitly. And part of the reason I wasn't protected from the terrible experiences was because those experiences were burning off past karma from bad things that I did in other lifetimes.
Okay.
And I've come to accept that completely. And I think it's a really good thing. You know, I feel cleaner today, you know, for having jettisoned all that stuff. And then I took the experiences and I did the best thing I could with them. I started to go out there and talk to people and educate people and write the book and try to make a difference. You know, that's about anything that somebody can do is to try to make a difference. To take what's been done with you or to you and see what you can do to turn it to the good and make something good come out of it.
Well, huge thanks for coming on tonight. It's been fun. Thank you for your service, of course. And keep doing what you do, and you do it well, and huge thanks from the heart. And
okay, all right, well, thank you very much for having me in.
Yeah, it's been fun. And to those watching tonight's interview, hope you enjoyed it. I'm your host, Mr. Great. More interviews coming up, and I'll see you guys next time. So take care, everyone. Hello, everyone. This is Mr. Great, and thanks for watching today's episode. If you are an abductee, contactee, or experiencer, and you believe that your story could help others, please feel free to contact me through my YouTube channel email. When it comes to experiencers, the ET phenomena, and the future, remember, truth will out.